What if I told you that the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're doing too much? It's because you're constantly explaining who you are to people who don't deserve that access? You're not tired from responsibility. You're tired from the invisible pressure to justify yourself, to soften your truth, to narrate your growth. And the more you explain, the less you feel like yourself. So what if you stopped speaking from exhaustion and started building in silence? That's what this series is about. I'm going to walk you through the 5 Stoic disciplines that helped me reclaim my energy, rebuild my focus, and finally let my silence say everything I no longer needed to. If any part of this hits home, drop a quick comment below and write, "This feels familiar." You'd be surprised how many men are carrying the same weight. But in silence, there comes a point when you stop trying to be understood, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You realize that growth doesn't need an audience. It needs protection. And that strength doesn't come from how loud you speak. It comes from how consistently you build without needing to be seen. So if you've ever felt unseen, misunderstood, or stretched too thin by conversations that don't feed your soul, this might be exactly where you need to be. Stay with me, and let's begin again. This time, quietly. The cost of speaking too much. The more you speak to be understood, the more you surrender the quiet power of knowing yourself. Oh, no one tells you this, but talking too much doesn't make you understood. It makes you exposed. You think you're building connection, but what you're really doing is opening doors that were meant to stay closed. At least for now. I used to over-explain everything. My boundaries, my decisions, my next steps. I thought clarity would earn me respect. But in trying to be understood, I gave people access they hadn't earned. And when you do that long enough, you stop speaking from strength. You start speaking from fear. I remember trusting the wrong person once. Shared things I hadn't shared with anyone. I thought it was safe. Until one day, I heard my story, my private story, repeated back to me by someone else. Twisted, out of context, used not to hurt me, but to elevate them. And that hurt even more. That's when I learned. Words are sacred. And when you speak too often, too soon, to the wrong people, they lose their weight. You don't become known. You become scattered, uncentered, and eventually, unsure of your own voice. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But if you're constantly painting your thoughts for others to see, eventually you forget which color was ever yours to begin with. Now, I speak less. Not because I'm hiding, but because I've learned the value of holding something just for me. My clarity, my growth, my vision, these things don't need approval. They need space. And here's what surprised me the most. The less I explain, the more I hear. The more I observe, the more grounded I become. Silence stopped feeling like isolation and started feeling like sovereignty. So if you've ever felt exhausted from explaining yourself, maybe it's time to stop, not to run, not to hide, but to return back to the quiet place where you first heard your real voice. That's where the rebuilding begins. And from here, I want to show you how I started over, not through speaking louder, but by living quieter, through 5 disciplines that rebuilt my center without needing anyone to witness the process. Let's begin. Strategy 1. Delay the reaction. Dominate the narrative. I used to be quick to react, not because I lacked intelligence, but because I lacked control. Someone would challenge my opinion in a meeting, and I'd respond instantly, cutting them off mid-sentence, thinking I was defending my truth. Someone would disrespect me in public, and I'd push back with sharp words and sharper energy. And for a few seconds, it felt like strength. But it wasn't. It was ego. It was insecurity in a suit of armor. I didn't know it then, but I was handing away my power with every fast reaction. Every time I rushed to respond, I gave the other person control over the rhythm. They dictated the tempo. I just danced to their song. The worst moment? It was a leadership meeting with 2 board members and a full team watching. One executive blindsided me, publicly challenged a strategic decision I'd made weeks earlier. His tone was sharp, almost mocking. The old me would have fired back. And for a split second, I almost did. But something in me paused. And in that pause, I remembered, power doesn't shout. It calculates. So I didn't respond. Not immediately. I let the silence hang for a second too long. Long enough to shift the tension in the room back to him. Then I looked at the team, nodded calmly and said, "We'll address that. Thoroughly. After this session. For now, let's stay on track." I reclaimed the flow. I didn't need to win the moment. I needed to win the room. That day, I learned what Stoics mastered centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." It took me years to understand the difference between silence born from fear and silence born from command. One avoids. The other repositions. One hides. The other rewrites. Here's what I practice now without exception. I delay the reaction, not to avoid confrontation, but to dominate the inner response first. Every time something triggers me, an insult, a disrespectful look, a challenge to my authority, I don't meet it with emotion. I meet it with breath. My pause is my recalibration. I ask myself, is this about truth or ego, strategy or impulse? What story will this next sentence write about who I am? In that space between stimulus and response, I take back authorship. That's what most men miss. They think reacting fast proves they're strong. It doesn't. It proves they're controlled. Controlled by triggers. Controlled by emotion. Controlled by the need to be seen. But the man who pauses, he's dangerous. He's hard to read, hard to provoke, because his power is internal, because his narrative is deliberate. My mornings now start with silence. No alerts, no messages, just structure, meditation, cold water, weighted breathwork. That's where my real battle happens. Before the world touches me, I don't let the world set my emotional baseline anymore. You sated, and that stillness, that anchoring, carries into every room I walk into. You'll feel it before I speak, because I'm not reacting, I'm responding. Intentionally, quietly, powerfully. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this. You don't need to clap back to win. You don't need to raise your voice to regain control. Let silence be the first move. Let your breath reset the battlefield. And when you do speak, speak from stillness, not survival, because real power doesn't panic. Real power doesn't flinch. It waits. It watches. Then it moves. And when it moves everything. Stay focused. Stay quiet. Stay in command. Strategy 2. Speak through energy, not explanation. There was a time in my life when I over-explained everything. Every decision, every boundary, every shift in behavior. I thought clarity would earn me understanding. That if I just articulated myself better, if I gave them context, reasons, logic, they'd get it. They'd accept it. They'd respect it. But the more I spoke, the more diluted my presence became. It didn't create clarity. It created negotiation. Every sentence I offered was an invitation for someone to challenge my truth. I didn't realize I was giving away the very power I was trying to protect. I remember the moment I realized this. A younger colleague had crossed a line. Again, late deliberables, passive-aggressive tone. Undermining feedback behind closed doors. I called him in, sat him down, and began the conversation like a mentor. Calm, composed, but trying to explain. I told him how his actions were impacting the team, the project, the energy in the room. I gave him nuance, context, even compassion. And after 5 minutes of carefully chosen words, he leaned back and said, "I didn't think it was that serious. You should have just said it directly." Oh, that's when it hit me. He didn't need the essay. He needed presence. He needed to feel the line had been crossed, not through my words, but through the energy behind them. Because explanation without embodiment is just noise. It's soft. It can be argued. But energy, real, grounded, stoic energy, can't be debated. You either feel it or you don't. And when a man is rooted in his values, you feel it without him needing to explain a thing. Epictetus said it best, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And that's what I started doing. No more long-winded justifications. No more emotional disclaimers. I stopped narrating my transformation and started living it. If I made a change in my schedule, I didn't send a 3-paragraph message. I just implemented the new structure. If someone questioned my new boundaries, I didn't defend them. I enforced them, calmly, respectfully, but firmly. I stopped over-communicating and started radiating. Because people don't follow your words, they follow your frequency. And when your energy says, "I am focused, I am clear, I am not here to entertain debates," the room adjusts. Not instantly, but over time. They stop asking you to prove yourself. They stop pushing your lines. They stop underestimating you. Not because you shouted louder, but because your presence became undeniable. Now, when I walk into a room, I let the silence arrive first. I let my stillness do the talking. I speak less, but when I speak, I carry weight. Because I'm no longer performing. I'm aligned. And alignment speaks louder than articulation ever could. There's no desperation to be understood. No need to prove I'm right. I've made peace with being misinterpreted. That's part of choosing clarity over consensus. Silence over performance. Purpose over popularity. When you focus on yourself and stay silent, your energy becomes sharper, cleaner. You don't spread yourself thin trying to be palatable to everyone. You move with direction, with gravity, and eventually, the people who need to feel you will. And the ones who don't, they'll fall away. So here's the lesson. Stop offering your truth as a negotiation. Stop explaining your standards like they need approval. Be the example. Live it so fully that no one needs a paragraph to understand who you are. Because the most powerful men don't speak to impress. They move to express. And that movement speaks louder than anything words could ever say. You don't owe the world an explanation for your evolution. Just the consistency to back it up. Strategy 3. Protect the vision. Starve the vision. There was a time I believed that sharing my dreams would bring me support. That telling people what I was building would inspire encouragement, alignment, maybe even respect. I thought speaking it out loud gave it power. What I didn't realize was this. Some visions are too fragile for public consumption, too sacred to survive noise. And the moment you invite everyone in, you risk losing the thing that was meant to be yours alone. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I had a plan to launch a new venture, something deeply personal, something I had been quietly designing for months. It wasn't perfect yet, but it had momentum, excitement, heart. One night, over drinks, I casually shared the idea with a few people I thought would understand. Some nodded. One raised an eyebrow. Another gave backhanded compliments, dressed as advice. "You sure there's a market for that? Sounds like a lot of work. Didn't someone already try that and fail?" I laughed it off. But when I went home, the clarity I once felt was fogged with doubt. The passion was still there, but the noise had started. And noise, if you don't cut it off early, becomes distortion, not just of sound, but of purpose. That's when I remembered what Marcus Aurelius said. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them are right. The vision was mine. The energy was mine. But I had handed it over too soon, hoping others would see it the way I did. They couldn't. It wasn't their assignment. And that's when I decided. I would no longer feed sacred work to casual voices. I would no longer dilute my direction with unnecessary validation. Now, I protect my vision, like I protect my peace, ruthlessly. I don't talk about what I'm building. I build. I don't share the blueprint. I just lay the bricks. My silence isn't secrecy. It's sovereignty. It's choosing not to invite opinions into spaces they weren't designed to enter. There's a rhythm to creation that gets disrupted when you overexpose it. Think of the seed in the soil. No one applauds it. No one sees its daily struggle beneath the surface. But in that dark, quiet place, roots deepen. Strength builds. Foundations form. And one day, without warning, it breaks the surface, undeniable. Not because it was talked about, but because it was protected. If you want to build something that lasts, keep it away from the noise. Not forever, but until it's strong enough to walk on its own. Because prématurée exposure invite doubt. And doubt, when repeated by others, begins to echo inside your own mind. You start questioning what you once knew. You start shrinking what was once bold. And that's how great visions die. Not in failure, but in feedback. Now, when someone asks me what I'm working on, I smile and say, just staying focused. That's it. No trailers. No previews. Because I've learned, if you respect your vision, you don't parade it. You protect it. So protect your vision like a king protects his kingdom. Not out of fear, but out of understanding that anything sacred must first be shielded before it can be shared. Don't let noise interrupt what clarity once sparked. Don't invite opinions into places that require faith, not feedback. Build quietly, execute privately, and when the time is right, reveal only what's undeniable. Your vision isn't for everyone to see. It's for you to fulfill, in silence, with discipline, until it speaks for itself. Strategy. Choose battles worth your energy. Most people think staying silent makes you weak. That walking away means you've lost. That if you don't fight back, you don't care enough. But that's not wisdom. That's noise. And I had to learn that lesson through people I once considered family. A few years ago, I got dragged into a messy situation between relatives. Nothing to do with me. Just layers of resentment, gossip, and old wounds dressed up as updates. I remember sitting in a kitchen with one of them, someone I'd known since childhood, listening to their version of events. But it wasn't a conversation, it was bait. Every comment was laced with provocation. Little yabs, misquoted words, twisted assumptions. And then came the push. Don't you have anything to say about that? I did. A lot. In fact, I could have unloaded truth like a hammer. I could have exposed hypocrisy, defended myself, burned every bridge they thought they could control. But I didn't. I looked them in the eye, smiled faintly and said, I think I'll let time speak. And I walked out, not because I was afraid of the confrontation, but because I finally understood. Some battles aren't meant to be fought. They're meant to be left behind. Seneca wrote, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. The same applies to your energy. If you let every offense, every rumor, every opinion pull you in, you'll be everywhere, emotionally, and nowhere in purpose. You can't lead your life if you're constantly chasing explanations. Now, before I engage in anything, I ask one question. Will this help me build or just drain me? If it doesn't sharpen me, protect someone I love, or serve something bigger, I let it pass. I don't attend every argument I'm invited to. That's not silence out of fear. That's calculated restraint. The truth is, some people feed off your reaction. They don't want resolution. They want your energy. And when you withhold it, when you give them nothing to grab onto, you starve the cycle. You let the drama burn out on its own. These days, I protect my peace like I protect my health. I don't argue over group chats. I don't explain myself in comment sections. I don't try to fix how people remember things. I focus on building what matters. Because the older you get, the more sacred your energy becomes. And when you finally realize not every fire deserves to be fought, you stop carrying buckets of water everywhere. You walk lighter, think clearer, move faster. So the next time someone tries to pull you in, to defend, to correct, to clear the air, pause. Ask yourself, is this about truth or is this just noise? If it's noise, don't amplify it. Let it be in silence. And trust this, the man who doesn't waste his energy on petty battles builds a kingdom no one can tear down. Strategy 5. Let the routine be your loudest statement. There was a version of me that thought change had to be declared, that if I wanted to rebuild, I needed to post about it, talk about it, make it visible. I'd make promises, early mornings, strict diets, hard boundaries, and then tell people I was serious this time, as if saying it out loud made it more real, as if visibility meant accountability. But the truth is, most men don't fail from lack of intention, they fail from inconsistency. And the more I talked about what I was going to do, the less I actually did it. I became addicted to the feeling of starting, to the performance of discipline, but not the quiet execution of it. It wasn't until I stopped talking and started showing up in the dark that things began to shift. No announcements, no applause, Just mornings that started earlier, reps that no one counted, pages that got written when no one was watching, meals prepped in silence, walks taken alone. It was no longer about proving a point. It was about building something real, from the inside out. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Not say it to the world, say it to yourself. Then act, quietly, repeatedly. That's when the alignment comes. Not from volume, but from rhythm. Now, my life is built on routine, not as a punishment, but as a framework for freedom. I wake up before the noise starts, not because I have something to prove, but because I refuse to let the world dictate my state of mind. I train, not to sculpt a body for praise, but to command the room when I enter, with posture and presence. I journal, not for the world to read, but to process the thoughts that once ruled me. I go to bed early, not to be disciplined for show, but because I value clarity over chaos, and no one sees it. That's the point. My routine doesn't live on a screen. It lives in the results, in how I think, how I show up, how I lead. You can feel it in my decisions, in my calm, in my ability to walk away from things that used to trigger me. That's what quiet discipline gives you. Inner strength, with no expiration date. Most people are obsessed with breakthroughs, but I've learned real transformation is boring. It's found in the unsexy hours, in the repetition, in the doing it anyway. Your life isn't changed by the big moments. It's shaped by the mornings you didn't skip, the nights you didn't scroll, the meals you didn't binge, the words you didn't speak. My routine became my identity, not because it was loud, but because it was undeniable. The world noticed only after I stopped trying to be noticed. That's the paradox. When you stop performing discipline and start living it, the shift becomes visible without you needing to explain a thing. So let your routine speak for you. Not your captions, not your promises, your rhythm, your rituals, your consistency. If someone wants to know who you are, let them observe your patterns. That's where the truth lives. Not in what you say you'll do, but in what you do when no one's asking. Because real change is private long before it becomes public. And the men who master themselves don't wait for permission to begin. They just begin. In silence. In structure. Until one day, without a single announcement, they become impossible to ignore. The discipline to stay quiet. The power to stay true. You don't need to prove yourself to everyone. You don't need to respond to every voice, explain every step, or announce every chapter. Real growth happens quietly. And real men of depth, discipline, and clarity, they don't move to impress. They move because they've decided who they are. If you're on that journey, rebuilding in silence, protecting your focus, letting go of validation to reclaim your vision, then you're not alone. This is your space. This channel was built for men like you, men who are done explaining, men who are done performing, men who are choosing to lead themselves first, so they can lead everything else with purpose. I'd love to hear where you are right now. Drop a comment below. Share what hit home for you. Or if you don't have the words yet, just write, "I'm locked in." That's enough. That tells me you're in the arena with the rest of us. If this video spoke to something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's rebuilding in silence too. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more men who are quiet, focused, and unshakable. Keep going. You're not falling behind. You're just building something no one can see yet. And when the time comes, let your silence speak for you.